Hello, and welcome to this first Monday Talk, previously known as French Talks. Monday Talk is a monthly event organized by Alliance Française and in collaboration with the Embassy of France in Malaysia. It is a space for dialogue between French and Malaysian experts in various fields. This month's topic is human-wildlife conflict in Malaysian forests. And the focus will be on two emblematic mammals, the elephant and the tapir. I will now present you the panelists, Dr. Farina Othman, who is the director and founder of Seratu Aatai in Sabah, Mr. Shan Mugaraj, the executive director of the Malaysian Nature Society, and Ms. Shu Lin Wong, the co-founder and editor of the Makaranja, which is a journalism portal covering environmental and sustainability issues in Malaysia. Ms. Shu Lin will be moderating this discussion. Before we start, I would also like to mention that the two NGOs present here today, Seratu Aatai and the Malaysian Nature Society, are partially founded by the Embassy of France in Malaysia. I will now pass the floor to Ms. Shu Lin to open the discussion.
Thanks very much, Otilia. Hello, everyone, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you to the Alliance for inviting me to moderate, facilitate this very interesting discussion. So we're going to cover today, and the topic is very interesting. It's conflict in Malaysian forests. And basically what we're going to try and do today is to delve in a little bit on one of the biggest conflicts in the forests of Malaysia, which is between humans and wildlife. And we've got two wildlife experts here with us who have gone into the field, yes, and we're hoping that they can shed some light into this issue, yeah? And we're not only going to talk about problems and issues, we're also going to try and look at some of the solutions, yeah? So as Otilia mentioned, we focus our discussion on two iconic mammals, yeah? So we've got the Acrocodia indica, which is the Malayan tapir, yeah, which is found only on Peninsular Malaysia. And we've got the Elephas maximus borneensis, yeah, which is the Bornean pygmy elephant, which is only found in Sabah. This is in Malaysia, yeah. So, so two different parts of the country across the South China Sea, and yet they face very similar threats in terms of conflict with humans as a result of deforestation. Yeah. So because they are keystone species, basically, if we manage to manage conflict with them, it means managing conflict with a whole range of other animals. Yeah. So without further ado, what we're going to do is to start first with what is human-wildlife conflict, and maybe Shan, you can take us off first. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you very much. And a lot of people that says that human-wildlife conflict is between wildlife coming into human territory. But if you really look at it, when we start to develop in important areas, especially where there is forest reserve nearby and all, this wildlife will still, this is their home where they really stay, and they come out into the open area. And when there is a development happen, most importantly, what we really do, we don't really look at what wildlife in that particular area sometimes, especially when you look at the monkeys. This is very common, that we come across that monkeys coming into humans' house and disturbing into vegetation where people have planted. And same thing goes to tapir. Yeah. We know that a lot of areas, when they start to open, and this huge wildlife, especially tapir, they like to go to some grasslands, and when there is a disturbance happen, and also they like to move around in open areas or where there is stagnant or waters and all. So these are sometimes that you see them come out quite often. And when you talk about humans, that when they see this type of animal, some of them either they run away, or some of them like see, oh, very cute, let's go see. And then they start to feed. Yeah, they start to feed of them. Yeah. So and most of the time, this wildlife will still, they will, when they start to depend on food been given by human, and they will start to come back. Yeah, so this is where sometimes we feel a lot of issues, and we see some of the wildlife that really goes into a human's house and places where recreation, where garden areas and all that, they start to eat their vegetables or whatever plants they have planted, because these are areas where maybe those days was their playground, the wildlife playground, and if you disturb their playground, and they will come back. Wildlife was always, they have a big routine, they will move around in huge landscape areas, and they will come back to some of the areas, and if these areas be developed, and this is where the issue comes.
Sure, yeah, that's really great. So you can see the impacts that wanderings of, when animals wander into human habitation, yeah, and there's impacts on human activities such as, whether it's gardens or plantations and stuff like that. Farina, I'd like to ask you, you mentioned something, another aspect of the human-wildlife conflict, which is not quite human-wildlife conflict. Could you elaborate on that, please?
All right. Thank you so much, Swilin, and thank you, Alliance, for having Seratu Aatai. So basically, I am for me in this, very complicated issue like human-wildlife conflicts, actually, the one that will make the decision, the one who have to, tolerate it's human beings, like it's people, right? So we are the one who caused this issue to happen at the beginning, and then we are the one who have to kind of tolerate and how to manage this issue. So for me, it's also involved human and human conflicts. You have, I'm working with a species who have very opposite, so there are people who really love the elephants, and there are people who really hate the elephants, so most of the time when I'm working in this issue, I'm working a lot with people, try to understand what's the problem, because you have a group of people who have very substantial, huge losses because of this situation, but they can tolerate. They say, oh, it's nothing, this animal just passed through my farm or my field, and then they have to eat something, so they really understand the situation of this animal. But there are people who just maybe have one water tank being stabbed by the elephants, and then it's like they feel so upset, and sometimes the elephants are not coming to their backyard every month or every day, but they feel that this is a huge problem for them. So for me, when you deal with this issue, it's about you need to understand what is actually faced by the people. So you really need to understand the human conflicts behind this issue. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So human-wildlife conflict is also human-human conflict, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting way of looking at it. And you don't, so again, to try and capture the complexity of this issue, it's extremely complex. There's many different factors at play. And definitely both what Sean and Farina have said so far is, we have to talk about deforestation and the impact of deforestation that's causing these animals, whether it's tapirs or elephants or monkeys or any other animals, to come out of their habitats to look for food, to play, that sort of thing. And a lot of these places are where they used to roam. So let's look at deforestation. Yeah. So we've been losing forests for many years in Malaysia. Yeah, for many obvious reasons. And interestingly, I just want to point out that we have been losing less forests steadily for the last 4 years. Yeah. So like in Peninsular Malaysia, in 2016, we'd been losing 68,000 hectares. And last year in 2020, that's been halved to 33,000 hectares. Now in Sabah, in 2014, 28,000 hectares were lost. And last year, 4 times less forest is actually being cut. So just putting it out there to say that, a lot of people say it's deforestation that is causing wildlife-human sort of conflict, that sort of thing. Yeah, it might be a good sign, it might not. Yeah, so we're again going to go into this now. Let's look at when any kind of forest is open up, right? Farina, what happens? What happens when land that is traditionally elephant habitat is opened up? What do the elephants do? What's going on?
So basically, when we open up, like in Sabah, most of the time, it begins with the logging industry, right? So it's not really actually opening up the forest. You know, we just convert the logging area to other, you know, economic activities. So we have different types of forest reserve in Sabah. So some of this forest reserve, you can still use it for economic activities, right? So when you open this area, then you are actually you know, giving the habitats the opportunity to have like grasses, right? Because now there are less shades, and so grasses can grow very quick, you know, and there are plenty. So elephants are kind of attracted as well to this you know, new food resources for them. And when you open it up, and then there are more and more activities in these habitats, then the contact with people, you can, I mean, elephants are more regularly in contact with people. People see them more, you know, so, and obviously they are not happy whenever elephants utilize what they think which is belong to people. You know, they feel that elephants should be in the forest. The thing is that you cannot do it, because even in the forest, like for example in the central Sabah, which is harbor the largest elephant population in Sabah, you can see that there are a lot of human activities there, and whatever is suitable for you know, development, for agriculture, the same habitat is also highly suitable for animals like the elephants. So you know, so there are a lot of you know, reason why the conflict happen when you open up elephants habitat.
Okay, is this the case also in Peninsular Malaysia with the tapirs, Shang, that people look at tapirs and they say, oh no, you don't belong here, you actually should go back to the forest, you know?
Yeah, in Peninsula, the same thing, yeah, because you see, again, as I mentioned, when you start to open a forest area, grassland will come. And you know, just for wildlife, they love open areas sometimes. They roam around in grassland areas, and even elephant also feed in grass, and some tapir also goes, you know, like to be running around in grassland areas. And for development, where it comes in when people start to open the forest areas for development. In Peninsular Malaysia, we face other issues as well, you know, such as land entitlement, where, you know, people change the land title from forest, from logging goes to other development. So this is another thing that we have to look at. And the wildlife that roam around in these development areas, most of the communities around there will start to take them, and, you know, either they will call wildlife department to do, you know, translocation them. But the other problem that we face is how many forests that we have, how many huge landscape areas that this wildlife can go and stay.
Yeah, can I just ask, do you know what range a tapir needs in order, like how big an area does a tapir need in order to survive? Do you have that figure off your head?
We have did some studies, and we see that tapir really can move around more than 20 to 30 kilometers a day, you know.
Wow. And is it always in the same area?
Yeah, they go a circle, and then they either and they try to move around. They like to scout around. They like to look at, if they find there is food in certain areas, then they stay more longer time, and then they move, and sometimes you see them is solitary, you know, they're like one man only going around, you know, and only when they start to mate and when they have babies, you know, they gather around, and sometimes the mother and the babies will be around.
Okay. What about the pygmy elephants, Farina? How big a range do they generally need? And they move around in herds. They're not so much solitary animals.
Yeah, so it depends on like usually in fragmented area, elephants' home range is found to be larger than non-fragmented area. So we believe that, you know, in like highly fragmented area like Kinabatangan, they will have to travel further because they need to find you know, because the resources are in like patchy, so they have to like walk you know, even further to get food resources. And we have to remember that animals like I'm not sure about tapirs, but for elephants they are highly intelligent, right? And the male, they don't really scared about risk. They tend to take risks as long as we can eat a lot, we can eat so that they can build their body, right? And then the bigger, the better your body condition, then your chances to get mate, you know, female with a female is higher. So this is the kind, and most of the mitigation techniques that we use to mitigate human wildlife conflict or human elephants conflict is usually we try to stop them without taking into account the behavior of these animals. So that's the problem. That's why it's never effective, or it's only effective in a short term.
Sure. So you mentioned fragmentation. What that basically means is when a forest that is one whole forest basically gets cut off into smaller areas. Is that correct? Yeah.
So we choose whatever habitat that is most suitable, the easiest for us to use. And then we leave whatever left, you know, that we cannot use or we cannot work on to the animals. So in the example for Kinabatangan, you have all the swampy area, a lot of swampy area you protected for the elephants and other wildlife. But this, we realized from our studies that these are not suitable. The elephants doesn't really use it much, you know. So yeah, that's why it's yeah.
It becomes an issue, yeah. And likewise, in Peninsular Malaysia, is that the case also? Is fragmentation of forests one of the something that's happening that is driving tapirs to come into conflict with humans? Yeah.
Yeah. If you really see in Peninsula, I think most of the forest is already like an island. Like example, our national park Taman Negara, and surrounding of Taman Negara with 3 states, you know, but still. There is roads and there is development around it, and most of the tapir areas that we come across is areas that were small patches. And one thing interesting that, you know, how tapir and elephants play a role, you know, tapir they when they move around in the forest, elephants really builds pathways. They really break the forest layers, especially the lower species vegetations. They open up areas. So tapir will really follow, you know, where the elephant move around, you know, and when elephant starts to move around, they break, as you know, they like to go places where they go and eat the bamboo shoots and all this. So they move around and they break all this type of things. So at the end of the day, the smaller mammals will start to feed in between where elephants move around, and we know the elephants need a more bigger area, and for sure tapir will not stay in swamp areas as well. They like muds, they like to play with water, you know, but they will not sleep inside the water. You know, so these are things that where areas now becoming more smaller through other types of development, such as roads, such as plantations. So these are some of the things that where we are looking at how to have that sustained balance.
Sure.
In housing areas, we also have one of the area that where we are, you know, trying to translocate the tapir to another different area. Example, that one in center in Shah Alam is one of the most industrial area where Bukit Cheraka. And that is one of a tapir habitat area, and nowadays is surrounding with housing estates, huge development of housing estates. So, and where is tapir going to go if every time when they come out they see a house? Yeah, so these are the things that we have to translocate them and to find another home But to find another home, we need also the landscape.
Sure, absolutely. So you mentioned two things there. One is plantations. So you have actually, let me just recap. So you mentioned fragmentation, and you also mentioned shrinking habitats. The size of each habitat now is getting smaller and smaller, partly due to the fragmentation of these habitats. Yeah. Now you mentioned also plantations and roads. Yeah. Just very quickly, because a lot has been already talked about in terms of palm oil, but we have to mention palm oil. Again, the area that palm oil is actually being planted has actually also gone down through the years, and I'm just wondering whether palm oil is the biggest culprit. People say it's because of palm oil that we have forest fragmentation and that we have animals coming out. And just very quickly, Farina and Sean, could you weigh in, maybe Farina first, in terms of plantations?
So your question is again, how the oil palm
basically is oil palm, a lot of people blame oil palm and they blame only oil palm.
Okay. All right, so I think first of all, having working with the industry and this issue, I feel that oil palm is already there. So you, by hook or by crook, if you want, if we cannot deny that this industry has play a big role in contributing to the economic of Malaysia. So this because of that, we get to improve our health care system. We have to get to improve our education. So you cannot deny the contribution of the industry, but obviously there are a lot of things that we can improve. So the problem with right now we're facing in Sabah with elephants in this landscape is that people are still thinking that elephants should stay in the forest. They shouldn't come. Why they are so afraid of having elephants or other wildlife in their plantation is that because they are facing a lot of cases where suddenly you have elephant found dead without any explanation. We have a couple of cases where we follow the same elephant for a few days, and then the next day this elephant found that without any explanation. So and after that the industry will get blamed, despite of all the good things that they are trying to do, with the certification. So everyone wants to now fence their plantation. So I can see that this industry can play a lot of important role in conserving our wildlife, in conservation. And we found people who wants to do this not only for recognition, but they want to do this for they really see the importance of they realize that at the beginning maybe the way they conducting like opening up the landscape without taking into account the needs of the wildlife which share the same landscape, and now they want to do it in a correct way. So we have to help them. We have to find a way that we can support each other. So right. I think we cannot deny the role of plantation in this field, doing conservation.
And I think you brought up a very important point. It's basically, it's not up to you guys. So you're a wildlife expert, Farina, you're a wildlife expert, Sean, and therefore it's only you guys, you go sort out this human-wildlife conflict. Yeah. Basically what you need is all parties coming on board, yeah? Mm-hmm. Now, Sean, I'd like to move you on to roads and railways. Now, you mentioned roads being another thing that is fragmenting forests where tapirs and elephants live, and therefore bringing them into conflict with humans. I just did a very quick check and found that in Malaysia we have about 250,000 kilometers of roads, largely in Peninsular Malaysia, unfortunately. So again, infrastructure is a factor of wanting to build infrastructure is a factor of wanting to uplift the economic levels of the poorer parts of Malaysia, for example, in Sabah. Yeah, in railways also, it's mostly in Peninsula. There's no railways in Sarawak, and a short, very cute sort of scenic railway in Sabah. Yeah, and in railways we have a lot less. We've only got about 1,800 kilometers of railways. But now there are two very big projects coming up. We've got the ECRL, which is the East Coast Rail Link, which is about 665 kilometers long. That's a train which is in Peninsular Malaysia, and that's about 612, about 3 times the length of the current railway system we have now. That's going to cut right across the Peninsular Malaysia, linking the poorer states of the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia to the west coast. Yeah, but it's going to cut right across tapir and elephant habitat. Shan, do you have any any comments on this? Like, tapirs already are known for being roadkill. They're mostly known for being roadkill. You built this railway line there. Are they going to be now train kill or railway kill? What do you have any comments about this?
Yeah. We was looking at the EIAs and all that on this railway line, and as well as the highways that coming across.
Yeah.
And,
so EIAs are. EIAs are environmental and environmental reports.
Environment reports. Yeah, impact assessment reports.
Right.
So we look at in Peninsular Malaysia, we know that development is coming, and roads are coming in, and as well as railway lines. Just to share that we have issues on example. Okay, we railway lines. Maybe there's good and maybe there's bad, but the issue is when we start to split this forest into 2. Highways will split forest into 2, and the forest becomes too fragmented, and wildlife will cross in between. Just for sharing, in 2015 to 2020, almost 92 tapirs have been killed in road kills, and tapir, their eyesight is not good when you shine lights, so they will just, if there's a car lights coming in front of it, they just stand put. They don't move. They just stay, and they don't run. So and this is where sometimes they've been roadkill, and then it's black and white somehow at night. The camouflage makes it there, so sometimes people don't cannot see when it comes very close, the emergency brake, and that's how people knock into tapirs. And conversion of land from forest reserve into transport into highways or railway line. I know that the ECRL is looking at building tunnels and all that. The question is, are you converting the land? When you build tunnels, the land above the tunnel, is it still forest reserve? These are questions where it's not really clear for us as well.
Sure, yeah. And in Sabah as well, you've got not this big railway project, you've got a very big highway project. This is the Borneo highway project. Again, the number of roads in Sabah is very few. For such a big state, you've only got about 22,000 kilometers of roads. Only half of those are sealed. So that, you can imagine that the government feels there's a great need to build more roads, to build a highway that will link not just different parts of Sabah, but also Sabah to Sarawak, to Brunei, and to Kalimantan. And that is why they've come up with this huge Pan-Borneo highway idea, which is about 2,200 kilometers. That's a lot of road, yeah? And about half of that is in Sabah, if I'm not mistaken. But again, roads, as Shan said, they split habitats into half. I believe there's one particular area that you guys have been looking at, which is in Teluped, in Sabah, yeah, and that's big elephant country, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, we are not in Sabah. We have this coalition called 3H coalition. So we are not against any development. We understand the need to develop and to connect, rural areas to the city. But there are a few sensitive areas, not only sensitive, but highly sensitive, because these animals, first of all, they are endemic. You don't find them any other places except for either Sabah or Borneo. And then, they really live in a highly they have like specific habitat requirement that they need. So Teluped is one of it, and it's going to cut the first class forest reserve.
What's a first class forest reserve?
Basically, you cannot do any development. You cannot convert that to anything. You cannot you cannot log and stuff like this. So it's like fully protected. All right. So there is like a logging road in this area, and this is where they want to convert it. But we realize because of this logging area, a lot of wildlife are attracted to this area. So it will and when we put all the movement data of elephants, we realized that there are about 30 kilometers of elephants area where elephants are actively using this will be now affected. And people say that elephants can adapt, but we know that this area is not only the home for the elephants, it's the home for other wildlife species that really depends on forests. So if you remember, there is this peasant, the Bornean peasant peacock, it's rarely found, you don't really found this, but when we put our camera traps out there, we got some pictures of them. So we are losing a lot of things, so we did give some other options. We not only give the problems, but we give solutions. But it looks like it received very little support from the authority. But we think that we will continue to talk about this, to find people who we can discuss and present this idea, so that hopefully we will try to avoid like long-term negative impact from this.
Sure, yeah. So you mentioned solutions, and there are solutions, definitely. We've been talking about all this conflict and fragmentation and all this sort of thing, but there are solutions. One of them being that you've got to work with different stakeholders, including plantation owners, including government. Now you're trying to talk to authorities and stuff like that. But coming to another sort of basic solution, we're losing forests. We are fragmenting them. We're making them smaller and smaller. Should we plant more trees? Is that a solution to solve human-wildlife conflict? I believe that this year the UN has launched a decade. It's called the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So they want it to be a global event. And in Malaysia also, at the beginning of this year, the government started basically a tree planting program, which is a huge program. It's actually going to go on for 5 years, where they want to plant 100 million trees between now and 2025. That's half the length of the UN Decade on ecosystem restoration. Now, restoring ecosystems, is that an important solution to solve human-wildlife conflict? Shan, what sort of planting projects is MNS doing?
Yeah, we are involved in this particular 100 million tree planting campaign that really going on. But our to restore a site, this is another thing that we need to look at is, first of all, is the site will be preserved or not? Yeah.
So no point planting trees if there's no protection for it.
No protection. Yeah. And at the moment, what we are doing is we are planting in areas where buffer zone areas between the plantation and the forest reserve, and we are working with plantations to restore in high conservation value areas. So nowadays,
what does that mean? What's a high conservation value area?
Nowadays, under the plantations, especially the oil palm plantation, they have protected areas in the plantation for wildlife to move around. So we are enhancing and doing some planting in these areas, and we're also not only planting trees that not for logging trees, especially log trees, especially timber trees, not for that, but we are planting trees that can benefit for wildlife, for birds, and also for animals, that the fruiting body trees and all. So this is another thing that we are looking at. And also we are trying to convince the state government, because when it comes to land, state matters here. We are trying to convince the state government areas where we plant under this 1 million tree campaign, areas where we plant, we must have a protection. And the other suggestion also, when you build roads, do roads have forest reserves? Do roads can have protected plantations around the road areas? So these are another thing that we are trying to see the developers to look at it.
So that's engagement with the developers rather than
that engagement with the developers, to get developers to make sure there is areas where wildlife can roam around and they don't come and interfere where really cars are moving, you know, and where what do you call it, areas where housing areas where they also can have wildlife moving around, and we can plant back into these gap areas, even though the land title is already been changed into a to the developer's hand. But the developers can have this, you know, their own forest area in the developing ground, so that we can have these things secure, and there is this will help again to reduce maybe in that area where there is wildlife conflict with certain like monkeys and all that coming around. Then we plant trees that benefit to them closer to the forest edge, so that this wildlife do not come into your backyard. So these are the things we are trying to approach and to get more people to understand and to support. And we're getting corporates to help, yeah, to work on this. Yeah.
That's very nice. Yeah. Is this happening only in Peninsular Malaysia, or is it also happening in Sabah and Sarawak?
It's also in Sabah and Sarawak.
Also in Sabah and Sarawak.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. Lovely. Fantastic. A nationwide effort to counter through planting, strategic planting, and plants that work for wildlife. Yeah. Farina, what about in Sabah? And you're working specifically in Kinabatangan. There's some very interesting replanting programs going on there.
Yeah. So Seratu Aatai, our organization, we do not have specific replanting project, but we know that, for example, our partners, Hutan KOCP, you know, another French NGO based in Sukau, they do a lot of this replanting. So because they are working with orangutan, so you know, like trees are very important for the orangutan to move around and as their food resources, right? And one thing, one project that we're doing right now with the oil palm is trying to replant in their riparian area. So they have set up this riparian area as a wildlife corridor for, you know, not only elephants but for other wildlife species. So we are trying to restore this so that the animal will get attracted to come. And this is very important to all this replanting program in the oil palm, because, you know, it can be like a stepping stone for the wildlife, especially the orangutan, to move from one small pocket forest to another one, you know, so that it will reduce harm, because when they walk on the ground, then it will give them a lot of harm, right? But for elephants specifically, having, you know, like very dense forest is not very good, because they prefer to have to eat grasses, you know, they prefer grazing, like eating like grasses rather than browsing. So for Kinabatangan, it have to be win-win situation. So we suggested that in the riparian area along the river, you should keep some for, you know, like grasses patches for elephants, so that they won't, there is enough food for them. So you have to be very selective where you want to do this reforestation.
Sure, yeah. And it's all science-based. It's based on information, data gathering that scientists have been doing, wildlife people have been doing for the respective...
So for reforestation, if you just go and plant and you don't monitor them, it was our data, I mean, Hutan KOCP data showed that there are a lot of you know, sapling died. So you really have to go and maintain them. It's just not by just planting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 100,000, you know, trees without monitoring them. So that is one of the important component, I think, from our experience.
No, absolutely. I think tree planting has been going on in Malaysia for a long time. It's a cheap, easy way for a corporation or school or any kind of group to say, oh, we're doing something for the environment. And then they go away and you don't know what's going on with the plants. You don't know whether they've lived and nobody's checking in on them 5 years' time or whatever, that sort of thing. So it actually is a whole exercise in itself, this replanting for wildlife. Yeah.
Monitoring is is the key. You have to see, you know, what happened before, while, and after you do reforestation.
Sure, sure. And is this also the solution for highways and railroads? I mean, you know, once a highway goes through, I mean, you can't reforest that, because there's this road that's coming through, or a railway that's coming through. So I think some of the Shan, just now you mentioned like an overpass or, you know, a viaduct and stuff like that, which is extremely expensive to build, and not everybody wants to do it. Are there alternatives? Are there alternatives?
Yeah, they have in Peninsula, they have tried, they have wire ducts and all, but what we face is that the wire ducts over in Peninsula is not really, as we cannot tell animals to, okay, you have to use this bridge, crossover bridge to walk. They will not really recognize, or there is a pathway where they can cross over. And sometimes wildlife they just bulldoze in anywhere and then they just walk. So there is new methods. People have already, even in Peninsula, there's one site that they have built overhead bridges all the way through, the road, highways and all that, all the way through above the forest reserve. Yeah, there is one area that they have done that, and even it's costly, but we have to look this for long term, because if no means when we start to split the forest into two, it's a challenge. Tapir is one thing that we come across, especially the highway from the the East Coast Highway. Mostly every month, I think they are spotting tapirs crossing boats over there. And even though there is a under passage or upper passage, not all wildlife use this pathway. The other thing we are also concerned of poachers, where when you have upper passage and under passage, the poachers just wait there to do the poaching, so they know the wildlife will come across.
Yeah, back again to what Farina says, it's not about human wildlife, it's human. It's like you build this thing to help the wildlife, you forgot about the component, which is the poachers, getting access to this. Yeah. Farina, coming back to the Telupit example, so you've got this huge range, where 30 kilometers, where the elephants roam around 30 kilometers. Now, is there a need for better planning? You guys, can you say a little bit more about alternatives that you as wildlife researchers have proposed to the government specifically here? So they say, no, we want the road this way. So have you tried to engage them in terms of better planning, diversion, stuff like that?
Yeah. So we gave actually the best for us is not to disturb at all this area. So we presented a couple of reroute. So we try to alternative route, right? So there are, but like you said before, it will require a little bit more money or fund because it will require some bridges, but it will connect to the right kampong. You will be able to connect the kampong which are currently not connected by road to Telupit town, and it will not divert people, so people will still pass through Telupit town. So Telupit town will not be a ghost town. With the current alignment, people can avoid Telupit because they can go straight from Ranau to Sandakan or something, because it's a straight highway, right? So they can pass Telupit. But with these couple of options, actually we have a website that people can go and check out, if they want to know what's current on the advocacy work, on the recommendation that we give. So it's very accessible. We try to be very transparent. People can come and ask and things like this. So yeah, we do give them a couple of new alignment, which is more suitable for people and also for the wildlife.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we certainly wish you luck in trying to promote these alternatives. Yeah? Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. We've got to know a little bit about how elephants cross roads, how tapirs wander into housing estates and stuff like that. Perhaps to wrap up, you could each of you give a single point in terms of human-wildlife conflict. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Are there solutions? Are the solutions working? Are people working together? Shan, perhaps you could start us off just to wrap up the session.
Yeah. Wildlife human conflict, especially in this pandemic time, because there is wildlife is having difficulties on their food, and where there is no tourists going into these wildlife areas and all, we some wildlife depend on tourists also, because they start to feed them. So we're trying to avoid all this. How we can really do it is from Malaysian Nature Society (MNS), what we are looking at is we want them to we want all, especially the local communities, to become the eyes and ears. Awareness is very important, and what we know is education on environment is still lacking, and knowing about the wildlife. And this is where MNS is going out together with Wildlife Department to do awareness program to the communities to understand the wildlife and how they can play a part, how they can help. If the wildlife is coming at the back of your house, how you can help so that the wildlife don't disturb you, and the wildlife also can really happily eat what they want and they can go back into the forest. So that's how we already staying beside the wildlife. We already staying beside the forest reserve. How we can be part to help the wildlife and how wildlife can help us. Because if there is wildlife around your area, some wildlife will help human being as well. So in such, we should have a working, that means close relationship. We don't pet the wildlife, let it be wild, but we need to understand. So this is where educational learning and knowing about this wildlife will play a very important role for every individual for Malaysians to what to call it, protecting and preserving what we have now. So
yeah, and we certainly hope that these people who are getting this environmental education grow up to be running governments and to become developers, and they will actually use some of this knowledge and actually be able to do something about it, you know. Farina, what about you? Your last words, please.
Yeah, so I just want to highlight that in human and wildlife conflict, there is no one solution. We have to be dynamic. We have to take into account the behavior of the wildlife, and we need to try to understand the people. So for me, we need to, like a lot of people, when like our organization names is Seratu Aatai. If for your information, it means bersatu hati. It's a Sungai language because we are working closely with Sungai community in Kinabatangan. Because we want to try to tell people that
in English, how do you translate that?
So it's unity.
Unity.
Yeah. So basically, these elephants, this wildlife is not belong to the government or to the NGOs or to the scientists. It's belong to Malaysian, and we have to take ownership. You know, so we have to all come together, and then we have to try to make it a collaborative process rather than, you know, like a scientist tell all palm to do this and all palm say that, or whatever. So we all have to now come in unity and try to take ownership of this, you know, whatever, we have all this wildlife, because once it's gone, they will not come back. So no silver bullet solution for conflicts, and it has to be collaborative process so that everyone will have their chance to contribute. Yeah,
that's a wonderful summary. Yes, excellent. And so you, there you have it. You've got the story of the elephant and the tapir and conflict in the Malaysian rainforests. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Srilin.
Thank you, all of you, for participating in this very interesting discussion, which, although we focused on the Malaysian forests and the issues in Malaysia, I think this issue is a global one. Everywhere in the world, forests get cut off either for development or for commercial use. The topic involves each and one of us. In some parts of the world, as you well mentioned, people have tried to find solutions. Eco bridges are quite popular in Western Europe. Of course, just eco bridges, as Shan mentioned, it's not enough because you do need fences. You have to somehow help the animals use them. We don't have many poachers, but we do try to help the animals find their right environment. And I have to say there is also a project founded by a French NGO also in Sabah, Project Trails. You're probably aware of it. Also trying to build these eco bridges to help wildlife cross and not be disturbed by humans. Anyway, viewers will have the opportunity to ask all of you questions in a chat. So please do so. Thank you very much again. This will be the last Monday talk, unfortunately, till September or October, depending when we are allowed to have public events again. And we hope to see you all at Alliance Française when it's possible. Thank you very much again for your participation and for your involvement, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
you.
you.